what are the most notable changes to our tax returns, tax refunds this year?
There are no big changes to think of other than...
Okay, good. Moving on.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time.
Don't rush to do your tax early. I mean, there's some crazy number of tax returns get lodged in the first couple of weeks of July. Like millions of tax returns get lodged.
Whoa.
But one thing I've noticed is don't lodge too early. Don't lodge till your employer says that your pay-as-you-go certificate is finalised, and don't lodge until any of your investment income, shares, dividends, has been finalised and sent to the ATO. Because if you lodge too early, if the information is incorrect, you might need to lodge an amendment later, or the ATO may amend it for you.
We would love to hear from you, though, about your tax, I was going to say woes, your tax journey.
Yes.
Are you a DIY taxer? Do you
journey.
get it in the first weeks of July? How's that worked out for you? You can share it in the comments on the Facebook group, Money, Faith and Finance. We hope you're part of it. If you're not, join up right about
Join
now.
up. That's what we do.
Which does actually creatively, conveniently bring us to Pete asking you, what can I claim and what can I not claim?
What can I claim? Look, it's a good question. And I think when I say it's a good question, I think you need to ask the question. So I always say to clients, if you're not sure...
Even if it seems totally ridiculous that I'm asking you.
100%.
I saw an article the other day, I think it was on the Sydney Morning Herald, about some of the craziest things that accountants get asked. What can they claim? And there was things on there about, it was to do with your dog.
Can I claim a security expense? It barks at, scary people. So that's a security expense for my business.
In real life, has anyone come to you and actually...
100%.
The dog and the security thing?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. The question is it required for your job? So a lot of people will say to me, Pete, I bought a nice suit for work. Okay, but did you need the suit to do your job? And did your employer require you to do it? So for most of my tradie clients, uniforms, protective clothing, happy days, happy to claim it. But for your average person, you need to ask, did I need to spend this for work and was it required? And if not, ask the question. The ATO does publish helpful industry guides on their
For what
website.
industries?
A to Z. So it starts at A for adult workers and Z down to zookeepers.
Adult workers, like workers who are
Workers
adults.
who are adults, basically, yes.
Oh,
That's one way to think of it. So,
I see.
But
Right,
it includes teachers,
everything.
scientists, accountants. So it says, based on your industry, here's things that we think are common that you can claim. So it's not necessarily an exhaustive list, but it is a way to think about, hang on a sec, I'm an electrician, I'm a teacher, what sort of things could I claim as tax deductions? So it gets you thinking, and it's straight off the ATO website.
What is going on, Pete, with this quote-unquote super tax?
Super tax.
That I'm sure we've all been seeing headlines, notifications, 30-second videos of outrage about.
We have been. That's an excellent summary. I've had a couple of clients ask me this week, and they don't even think it's restricted to super anymore. So I had a couple of clients say to me this week, is there a tax if I've got things over $3 million? And I'm like, no. And it's only about super. So basically, the government was proposing, it's not legislation, so it'll need to be put through and negotiated, but basically saying if you've got $3 million in your super, you normally pay 15% tax on those earnings and on your contributions. What the government's saying is if your balance goes above $3 million, we're going to tax you on those earnings at an additional 15%. So you've already got a really high super balance. If it grows above that, we're going to tax you on that. So
we're dropping this episode before June 30. What should I be doing for definite, for real, by June 30?
Look, I think anything that you want to claim this year, you need to pay it before 30th of June. So that might be subscriptions. Donations is always a good one. So a lot of charities busy in the month of June. Super contributions. So if you wanted to make your own personal super contribution that you either were or weren't claiming, the fund would need the money before the end of June. So definitely do that this month.
We had this conversation recently, and you mentioned that someone had talked about tithing and tax kind of in the same breath, like giving to church. A lot of people call it a tithe. Felt like a tax on them, like an imposed amount.
Yeah.
And I thought, let's just bring that up while we're talking about tax. I know it's like totally a tangent.
Yeah.
But I'm still mulling over it. Well, what did you do in that conversation?
It's a good tangent. I mean, I guess it probably felt like it to the person because it felt a bit like a bill and something they had to pay. So they equated it to tax.
Yes.
But I guess because I work in tax, I think of tax as being compulsory and administered by the government, and you don't really have discretion about where it's spent. You have to pay tax. I do think of tithing as something that should be a bit more about led by the Spirit and should be, in a sense, voluntary. And also, too, you've got greater discretion about where that money would go. So, I don't really think of tithing as a tax. Maybe because of the percentage, in the Old Testament, people would tithe often a tenth, 10%. Maybe that's where that person sort of, that's what they clung to in that conversation. But yeah, to me, they are different. It's not compulsory. I think with tithing, it's unfortunate to think of it as a tax because then there is just a little bit of a grudge to it and a little bit of a, legalistic percentage, and then if you only do that, do you never want to pay any more? Like, none of my clients that I do their tax for go, oh, by the way, here's a tip for the government and can I pay some extra? There's no extra on the table. So I wonder with tithing, if you think of it as a tax, you're never going to want to pay any more. You're only going to want to pay what you already had to pay.
Help us then to think again about tax refund, tax return time here in Australia, 2025, June 30 approaching. Show me the money.
Tax is part of lives, people. Like, we're all grown-ups here. It is part of your life admin, but I think get involved in the process. And don't be afraid to think, have I spent the money? And then the second question is, was it deductible for work? Should I claim it? And then do your tax return.
Thanks, Dad, for the pep talk.
Yep, that's right,
Thank you, everyone's favourite accountant,
Yes,
Pete
I'll take
Burrows,
that.
from Lower Russell and Farr at Penrith, accountant with small businesses and individuals. We'll be back on the next episode of Money, Faith and Finance. I'm Ben McKecken. See you next time.